Academica Media. You are listening to Charter School Superstars, bringing you the voices of an education revolution.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Ryan Kairalla from Doral College. Our guest this week on the program is the executive director of the North Carolina Association for Public Charter Schools. Recently, our guest wrote an op-ed in the Washington Examiner where she called on local and national lawmakers to put students and their families first in the debate over public charter schools. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting www.ncpubliccharters.org. We are happy to welcome Rhonda Dillingham on to Charter School Superstars. Hello, Rhonda.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing so well. I gotta say, love North Carolina charters. I've had the opportunity to work with some charter schools in North Carolina recently. Loved coming to North Carolina, which is a fun experience in and of itself. And I loved seeing what's going on there in terms of charter education. It's a lot to be excited about. And you're particularly excited now because we're celebrating 25 years of charter schools in North Carolina. Can you reflect a bit on how the movement has grown in your state?
Oh, absolutely. And first, let me say thank you so much for allowing me to be on your podcast today. And thank you for saying such nice things about my state. I know I'm biased, but I think it's the best place to live in the country. We're really happy to be celebrating 25 years of charter schools in North Carolina. In 1996, we had bipartisan support of our bill that made it through the legislature and was passed to create for the first time public options for families in our state. And that's really important because, we really believe that children should not be limited by their zip codes. In fact, we say their zip code should not determine their destiny.
Yeah, definitely something that we hold firmly to here, and we are excited and always pleased by the opportunities that we are providing for families, regardless of zip code and charter education. I want to talk more about this notion that you spoke about with bipartisanship and how charter schools in North Carolina, we were supported with bipartisan support when they first started up. And North Carolina is no stranger recently to bipartisan legislative success in the education policy space. Most recently is a policy that you wrote about in the Washington Examiner, where you talked about a bipartisan passage of a law that allows charter schools to provide a virtual instruction option for its students this year due to COVID. So let me just ask you about bipartisanship broadly. What do you think accounts for the bipartisan cooperation we're seeing in North Carolina when it comes to charter school policy?
Well, I think, unfortunately, through the years, what has become an issue, not just in North Carolina, but across the country, that should be supported by both sides of the aisle, has become somewhat divided and contentious. But, when we put students first and we put families first, then I think that's when the barriers come down, the politics come down, and that's when we can really make some strides in the right direction. And in the case of North Carolina, this Senate Bill 654, it actually allows charter schools to provide virtual instruction. Now, that's important for a few reasons. One, every major school district in this state offers some type of virtual academy now. And so to level the playing field for our schools, we need to be sure that all public schools are able to offer the same type of instruction. And that, it's not like charters couldn't offer virtual instruction, but without that law in place, it meant that our school leaders and their boards had to submit a request for a material revision to their charters to the Office of Charter Schools. And so that was just some red tape that would take time, and we needed to eliminate that and get that off the table so that we could make this an option for our families and make our schools competitive with the district schools.
And if you're truly going to have school choice and effective school choice for families in any state, that has to also mean virtual options and virtual charter options. And this has only become more pronounced amid COVID, right? Where a lot of parents, because of COVID, have had their first taste of virtual education. And while a lot of parents did it and now want to go back to a brick and mortar school, at least in Florida, I can tell you, we have a lot of parents who like virtual and at least want to have a blended option for their students or want to have permanent virtual option for their students because it worked for their kids. So school choice and charter education needs to catch up to that. We need to have these kind of options for parents, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, whenever during the pandemic, our parents got a taste of what it might be like to educate students from home. We saw some of them were like, oh my goodness, I really respect these teachers now because I just couldn't do this every day. And they couldn't wait to send their kids back to the brick and mortar campuses. But then there were other families that really saw the advantage of being able to offer, have their students have access to virtual instruction. It could mean that they could travel, but their children could still learn from wherever they are. There are just so many advantages. And then the parents that might be uncomfortable with sending their children into the brick and mortar school because of the risks still associated with COVID, it just really needed to be a viable option for all families in North Carolina. And that includes our charter families.
Now, I want to come back to something that you said earlier in this interview, which is also something that was echoed by your Washington Examiner op-ed. And I like to call it Rhonda Dillingham's North Star for education policy. That when it comes to good education policy, according to your op-ed and according to what you said earlier, the rule that we need to follow is put the kids first. Make the students the winners. Make the families the winners. Everything else, all the red tape, we need to put all of that behind just putting the students first. Now, if legislatures were to adopt that mindset, how do you think that changes the way we make education policy?
Well, first of all, I think it's important that, our listeners understand my background. I'm a veteran educator. I taught high school English, every grade, every level for almost 20 years. And I've been in this role now as executive director of the North Carolina Association for Public Charter Schools for almost 5 years. And since the beginning, I've told everyone that I filter decisions about the association through the lens of what I think is best for students. I have 2 children of my own. One went to a district school, one went to a charter school, actually the one that I co-founded. And I just believe that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach to education. What worked for my oldest daughter in a district school would never have been satisfactory for my youngest daughter. So, and I know I'm not alone in that. There are families everywhere that need to have those types of options for their children. So, if we were to take the politics off the table, I can see how a lot of things would change if our policymakers, our legislators were to make decisions in this way. It could be that, in North Carolina, charter schools receive about 75 cents on the dollar because we don't get funding for capital issues and for facilities. So that could mean that, our legislators realize that puts an undue burden on our schools, our charter schools, our boards, and they have to find the funds for their facilities out of their operating budgets. It can be they run on very, very lean, tight budgets. And it could mean that our legislature takes a second look at that and says, if we're going to help the district schools with their facilities, we need to do the same thing for the charters. It could also mean that we get some assistance with the cost of transportation. In North Carolina, in our block grant, charter schools do get funding for transportation, just like the districts do. But the difference is, and this is where many people don't understand this, a single charter school providing bus transportation, I know of one that serves 11 different LEAs or 11 different areas in order to bring those students to that charter school. And that's really just not the case in any districts. So that is incredibly expensive, and to be able to do that. I know some schools that spend millions of dollars just on their transportation. So, and it's a priority because it allows access to the schools for all students. But again, if our legislators were able to see how important that is to students and their families, then we might be able to twist their arms a little bit to get some additional funding for transportation.
And I think about this North Star of putting the kids first and looking at it through the lens of virtual learning and having virtual charters, and understanding that inherent in the idea, as far as I'm concerned, of putting the kids first is also acknowledging that every kid is different and every kid learns differently, and certain kids learn best in different settings. And so if we're going to put the kids first, it means having effective virtual options for students, for those who need it. And it certainly means a lot of the common sense reforms that you were bringing up in that terrific answer there.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I could go on all day about the things we could do to kind of level the playing field. But at the end of the day, I think we do have some really great people working for us in our General Assembly in Raleigh, and they are interested in doing what's best for students. We need to take another look at how education is funded in our state. And I know there are some legislators that are making that a priority. So, I think that we are making strides in the right direction.
Well, and how have the North Carolina charters fared during the pandemic? I know in some states, the charter sector has strengthened and they've seen increases in enrollment. And in other states, there are other challenges that come with it, often from policy fixes that need to happen. How are things in your neck of the woods?
Well, I can tell you this, that we have seen an 8.5% increase in enrollment in charter schools.
Wow.
8.5%.
Wow.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
see, in Florida, we had 3% growth and we were bragging about that, but my goodness.
Yeah, I know, it's remarkable, but I think our schools did very well serving students during the pandemic. They were able to pivot quickly. Once the governor made the order to close schools, many of them were able to go to spring break quicker than than their calendars said they would. But that's the thing. That's the beauty about charter schools. They're able to be so flexible and so nimble. And during the pandemic, this is when we really saw that exemplified the most, because they just were able to make that decision about changing their calendars, went to spring break, did some planning with their teachers to be able to serve students. And then once break was over, they started school back again and didn't miss a beat. I know of one district in our state where the teachers were told, don't introduce any new concepts the rest of the year. Wow. Just go back and review what you've taught so far this year. So if that's a mandate from their leadership, then it's no wonder that we have these learning gaps. That we're seeing now that students are back in the classroom, but that wasn't the case in our charter schools. They were able to continue on with instruction, and so we see that it's turned out to be a really positive thing for the students in our charter schools.
That's very inspiring. Happy to hear it. You can find out more about our guests' work by visiting www.ncpubliccharters.org. Rhonda, before we let you go, one last question. If, with the snap of your fingers, you could make any change to the education system, what change would it be?
Like I said earlier, I just have a heart for children, a heart for young people. I tell people all the time, if it's one thing that I miss about being a teacher, it's that everyday interaction with my students, because I just love teenagers especially. And I know a lot of people think, wow, that's weird because a lot of people struggle with dealing with teens, but not me. And so I would say, if I could snap my fingers and change things in education, it would be that every student in North Carolina and across the country has access to a high quality education. In our state, we have 63 counties that offer some type of charter school option, but we have 100 counties. And so that means there are areas of our state, and particularly in the most extreme east and west parts of our state, that still don't have charter schools as a school choice option. And we need to fix that. We need to change that so that all students have access to the best education, and it sets them up for their futures. And that's what I would hope for.
Tremendous. One more time at that website, www.ncpubliccharters.org. Rhonda, this has been a treat. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. And I'll also say that folks can find us on Facebook at NC Public Charters and on Twitter at NCACPS.
And that's why you're the executive director, because you're quick with that promotion. We love it. Thank you, Rhonda, and thank you all for listening to Charter School Superstars.
Great to meet you. Thank you so much.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.